In the UK, it's all eyes again on the pound. There have been mixed messages in the last 24 hours from the Bank of
Mr. Speaker, this
England.
morning I had meetings with
This,
the Minister
as
of
the
Courts
Prime
and his
Minister
wife
was getting
Julia
set
and his
for
5 children.
questions time in the House of Commons. Bond yield prices going up again as amid investor fears over the debt. And we heard mixed messages in the Commons. Liz Truss pledging that her initial pledge to cut taxes will go forth eventually, and that the deficit would grow. She got a grilling from the leader of the opposition.
During her leadership contest, the Prime Minister said, and I quote her exactly, "I'm very clear. I'm not planning public spending reductions." Is she going to stick to that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are spending almost £1 trillion of public spending. We were spending 700 billion back in 2010. What we will make sure is that over the medium term, the debt is falling. But we will do that not by cutting public spending, but by making sure we spend public money well. And the honourable gentleman talks about our spending, which he doesn't seem to support, on the energy price guarantee. But the reality is he can't criticise us on one hand for spending money, on the other hand claiming we're cutting public expenditure.
For more, let's go to London. Tim Bale is Professor of Politics at Queen Mary University. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24. So there you hear it. The deficit will go down eventually. There won't be cuts in public spending. But in the same Prime Minister's question time, the Prime Minister still says she wants her tax cuts. What do you make of it?
Well, I think probably like the markets, I don't think it adds up, to be honest. There is possibly some wiggle room in what she said, in the sense that although she said she's not going to cut public spending, that could mean that she will hold public spending as it is now. And that, in effect, of course, will be a cut. So if she maintains public spending at the nominal level, given how big inflation is right now, that, in effect, is a spending cut. But that still won't actually make up for the apparently 60 billion pound deficit that she's facing. So I think many people still believe that she will have to row back on some of the tax cuts that she has proposed. And certainly if she's relying on growth to close that gap, I think she's got another thing coming, because the IMF has said, and most people believe that the Office of Budget Responsibility will say, that growth will simply not do the trick.
And it's having an impact on ordinary households, particularly pensioners, those who need to refinance mortgages. The latest confusion in the markets isn't helping.
No, it's not. And to be honest, neither the government nor the Bank of England's communications have been particularly good today, or indeed over the last few days. We've heard different things from different ministers, for example, and we've also heard different messages coming out of the Bank of England. We've had the official message coming from the governor that the Bank of England is going to stop the support that it's been offering on Friday. But we also heard via the Financial Times, for example, this morning, that the bank would extend that help if necessary. And then we've had the bank say later today that, in fact, no, Friday is the cutoff date. So I think people are very, very concerned, not just in the markets, actually, but ordinary people, because, as you say, all of this does have a real world impact on people, particularly through mortgage rates.
Now, we showed that clip from Prime Minister's Question Time, and arguably there's always a bit of theater in this weekly ritual you have in the House of Commons. Is the problem for Liz Truss come more from the Labour Party or from her own backbench? The BBC reporting earlier that there are Conservative MPs that might vote against her when it comes to lifting a ban on fracking in the UK.
Yes, as usual. The Prime Minister not only has to look opposite, but also behind her. And it is certainly the case that a lot of Conservative MPs have voiced concerns about that particular policy. fracking was stopped in this country because of an association with earthquakes in some of the places that it was being done. And some of those places are represented now by Conservative MPs, and there is local opposition to that. And given how difficult the electoral situation they're facing is, it's understandable that they're not too keen on going ahead with it. But she's got more problems than just fracking. It would appear that many Conservative MPs are now thinking about perhaps blocking some of the tax cuts that she wants to make. And of course, some Conservative MPs are already talking about trying to ditch Liz Truss as soon as possible because she has created the party's opinion poll rating. But it's certainly the case as well, I think, that the crisis for the government has really, in some ways, energised the opposition. And I think encouraged people more generally to look at Keir Starmer as an alternative prime minister. And he seems to be playing this crisis quite well right now.
Okay, so what happens concretely? What's the precedent if there's a bill that comes up in the House of Commons and the ayes don't have it for the Conservative Party?
Well, it's not the case, as some people seem to assume, that if Conservative MPs were to vote against particular measures in the finance bill, that would represent, if you like, a vote of no confidence in their own government and would therefore precipitate an election. It's perfectly possible for Conservative MPs to defeat some measures in the budget or the mini budget or the finance bill, whatever they choose to call it. And the government can still survive. But it would clearly be a major reversal for the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and he may have to consider his position. He may have to do that anyway, to be honest. And of course, because they are, if you like, wedded at the hip for the Prime Minister as well. So it would be a humiliation. Whether she could survive that politically, I don't know. But I don't think we will necessarily see any election anytime soon.
Won't see any election anytime soon, but what will we see if she starts losing votes? I mean, is another leader?
We may see an attempt to defenestrate her. I mean, at the moment, the rules of the Conservative Parliamentary Party suggest that she's safe for a year, but those rules are very much a movable feast. It's possible that they can be changed if necessary. But we then get into the question is there an alternative on offer? If there's not an obvious alternative around whom the parliamentary party can cohere, then we would have to have another leadership contest. That would involve the membership. And that would, of course, mean another few weeks of chaos and confusion and uncertainty, which the markets won't like. So Conservative MPs are in a kind of multiple catch-22 situation right now.
Multiple catch-22 situation. Tim Bale, many thanks for joining us from London.